Gascón isn't being allowed to appear at any Oscars event for the film, and now his own director doesn't want anything to do with him. Here's what the director told Deadline, quote, "It's very hard for me to think back to the work I did with Karla Sofía, the trust we share, the exceptional atmosphere that we had on set that was indeed based on trust. And when you have that kind of relationship and suddenly you read something that the person has said, things that are absolutely hateful and worthy of being hated, of course that relationship is affected. It's as if you fall into a hole because what Karla Sofía said is inexcusable. More and more, the Oscars are looking like a ceremony for independent and protest films. I didn't know if I was watching an Afro-Korean festival, a Black Lives Matter demonstration, or the 8M feminist strike. Apart from that, an ugly, ugly gala. But now his cloak of marginalization doesn't work anymore. Now he's persona non grata in Hollywood. In a matter of weeks, he's gone from giving weepy speeches at the Golden Globes to being disowned by his own director."
This story is a classic example of what happens when Hollywood eats its own. A so-called groundbreaking actor, Karla Sofía Gascón, was celebrated as the next big thing in progressive entertainment. But now, in a stunning turn of events, Gascón has been completely abandoned by the same industry that once praised them.
But it looks like it may not happen, tragically. As it turns out, at the last minute, the script has been totally upended. And it's been upended in the most fitting way, which is that Karla Sofía Gascón has just been canceled because of his old tweets.
First, Hollywood couldn't stop talking about Emilia Pérez, a film nobody actually watched, starring Gascón as a cartel boss who transitions into a so-called family woman. The media hyped it up as revolutionary, calling it a landmark moment for transgender representation in cinema. But as usual, the movie was more of a political statement than an actual film worth seeing.
It was just a couple of weeks ago that we discussed the sudden rise of an actor named Karla Sofía Gascón, who stars in one of the worst movies ever made, Emilia Pérez. And in case you're not familiar with it, which you probably aren't because no one has actually seen this film, Emilia Pérez is a musical about a male cartel boss who gets a sex change so that he can reinvent himself as a caring family man, or family woman, I guess. Nothing about the plot makes sense. The acting's atrocious. The musical numbers are excruciating, seemingly by design.
Gascón, a transgender actor, was on track to become the first man to ever win Best Actress at the Academy Awards. The industry pushed this narrative relentlessly, framing it as progress. But then, old social media posts surfaced, and suddenly, Gascón went from a celebrated star to a persona non grata.
To give you an idea of the caliber of writing on display, at one point an actor in a gender clinic sings the line, "From penis to vagina." So you can pull up the footage if you're so inclined. I can't bear to play it again, but if you want to, you can find it. Nevertheless, the movie has been a huge hit. It has not been a hit with audiences or in theaters or even really with movie critics, but it has been a hit with the awards shows because Gascón identifies as transgender. So they finally have some of that trans representation they're always demanding.
The tweets? Nothing out of the ordinary. They weren't hateful, dangerous, or even particularly shocking, just observations about current events and demographics. Gascón had dared to criticize the Oscars for prioritizing activism over filmmaking and had made a few comments about George Floyd and the growing Muslim population in Spain. That was enough to get the entire industry to turn its back on their former star.
I truly believe that very few people ever cared about George Floyd, and calling him a drug addict and a hustler. Later that year, she took aim at Muslims in her native Spain when she wrote this post that says in part, "Sorry, is it just my impression, or are there more and more Muslims in Spain? Every time I go to pick up my daughter from school, there are more women with their hair covered and their skirts down to their heels."
This is Hollywood, in a nutshell. They claim to champion free speech, diversity, and representation until someone steps out of line. Then, it's total destruction. Gascón learned the hard way that loyalty in Hollywood is conditional. 1 minute, you're a hero. The next, you're an outcast. Gascón's sudden rise to fame was no accident. The entertainment industry had already decided that Emilia Pérez was going to be a milestone for transgender representation, whether the movie was good or not. Netflix backed it, critics praised it, and the Academy jumped at the chance to nominate Gascón.
At long last, a so-called trans character was being played by a man who identifies as a woman. In Hollywood, this is an achievement on par with, the moon landing, or even greater than that. For months, they haven't been able to contain their excitement. So the Academy, in their enthusiasm, nominated Gascón for the Best Actress award along with 12 other awards.
But here's the thing. Almost nobody actually watched the film. In an attempt to manufacture success, Hollywood pretended that Gascon's performance was some kind of masterpiece. In reality, it was just another example of forced representation being shoved down everyone's throats,
making it one of the most nominated films of all time. Now, at the time, it seemed pretty clear how this story would play out. It was easy to assume, as I did, that Gascón would inevitably win the award, become the first ever man to win Best Actress. For the first time in history, men would win both major acting awards at the Oscars.
The Academy's push to give Gascón the Best Actress nomination was a calculated move. It had nothing to do with talent or performance. It was about checking the right political boxes. But even within their own system, there are unspoken rules. Gascón didn't just cross the line, they shattered it.
And then all the actual women would have to pretend to be very enthusiastic about this development. And this would be how the Academy would strike back at Donald Trump, fascism, and so on. In fact, in some ways, I was kind of looking forward to it. I was looking forward to the clip of this man winning Best Actress and then cutting immediately to all the women who lost and just seeing them pretend to be excited in that moment. I was kind of looking forward to that. And but it looks like it may not happen, tragically.
So, what exactly did Gascón say that caused this sudden downfall? Were they caught saying something truly shocking? Something indefensible? No, not even close. The controversial posts were nothing more than opinions. Opinions that, just a few years ago, would have been seen as completely reasonable.
So these are the first two highly incendiary, totally cancel-worthy tweets that The Hollywood Reporter chose to cite. And it's a little odd since there's nothing remotely interesting about either tweet that they read.
Gascón made a few statements about George Floyd, referring to him as a hustler and a drug addict. Objectively, this isn't even an opinion, it's a fact. But in Hollywood, truth doesn't matter. If you say something that goes against the approved narrative, you're finished.
It's happening again. It's pretty fascinating. Watch.
Oscar nominee Karla Sofía Gascón is catching heat for controversial takes she posted online in recent years about everything from Islam to George Floyd. The Emilia Pérez star's posts on X started to make the rounds early Thursday morning and were deleted not soon after. Less than a month after Floyd was murdered in Minnesota in 2020, inciting nationwide Black Lives Matter rallies, Gascón shared these words, saying, "I truly believe that very few people ever cared about George Floyd," and calling him a drug addict and a hustler.
Another tweet pointed out the increasing number of Muslims in Spain. Again, this is just an observation, not an attack or an insult. But in today's world, noticing demographic changes is enough to be labeled a bigot. The outrage machine doesn't care about context, only about finding the next person to cancel.
Later that year, she took aim at Muslims in her native Spain when she wrote this post that says, in part, "Sorry, is it just my impression, or are there more and more Muslims in Spain? Every time I go to pick up my daughter from school, there are more women with their hair covered and their skirts down to their heels."
The backlash was swift. Almost overnight, the same industry that had been pushing Gascón as a trailblazer turned on them completely. The tweets began circulating, people feigned outrage, and suddenly, the awards campaign for Gascón collapsed.
Saying that there are a lot of Muslim people in Spain is just an observation about demographics, also happens to be true. Then, of course, there's the first tweet, which is equally inoffensive, saying let's call him Drug Floyd, saying that Drug Floyd was a drug addict and a hustler is probably the kindest, most sanitized way that you could describe George Floyd, aka Drug Floyd. If anything, I'm offended that he was far too nice.
Netflix, which had been championing Emilia Pérez, quickly distanced itself. The Academy, which had been celebrating Gascón's nomination, started scrambling for a way to cut ties. And even the film's own director, who had once praised Gascón's performance, publicly disavowed them.
That tweet was one of several that Gascón posted about Floyd. Here's another. The post that's translated on X read as follows, quote, "Let me get this straight. A guy tries to pass off a counterfeit bill after consuming methamphetamine. An idiot policeman arrives and goes too far in arresting him, killing him, ruining the lives of his family and colleagues, and turning the guy with the bill into a martyr hero." So if there's anything offensive about that tweet, it's that he got the facts wrong. First of all, the predominant drug in Floyd's system was not meth, it was fentanyl.
The betrayal wasn't subtle. Gascón wasn't just being criticized, they were being erased. No one wanted to be associated with them anymore. The same people who had been calling them an inspiration were now pretending they never existed.
More and more, the Oscars are looking like a ceremony for independent and protest films. I didn't know if I was watching an Afro-Korean festival, a Black Lives Matter demonstration, or the 8M feminist strike. Apart from that, an ugly, ugly gala. Well, okay, now we're getting somewhere, maybe. You could start to see why the Academy is taking some of this personally. At the same time, again, he's right, and his take is completely reasonable. He called out the Oscars for implementing DEI everywhere and using the awards ceremony for activism.
Of course, there's a script for these situations. When a Hollywood star gets canceled, the first step is to apologize. Gascón did exactly what was expected, issuing a public statement claiming they had caused harm and expressing deep regret.
And in response, he came out and delivered a big apology in a desperate attempt to save his bid for Best Actress.
The apology was filled with the usual nonsense about how they stand for love and inclusion and never meant to hurt anyone. It was the classic desperate attempt to win back favor. But here's the problem. It never works.
Oscar nominee Karla Sofía Gascón is apologizing amid online controversy. The Emilia Pérez star expresses her regret for recently resurfaced past offensive posts she made on X, formerly known as Twitter, that appeared to target Muslims, the killing of George Floyd, and diversity at the Oscars.
No matter how much you grovel, the mob doesn't forgive. Hollywood doesn't actually care about apologies. Once you've been marked for cancellation, there's no coming back. Gascón learned this the hard way.
On January 30th, Karla says, quote, "I want to acknowledge the conversation around my past social media posts that have caused hurt. As someone in a marginalized community, I know this suffering all too well, and I am deeply sorry to those I have caused pain. All my life I have fought for a better world. I believe light will always triumph over darkness."
Perhaps the most telling moment in this entire fiasco was when Emilia Pérez's director, Jacques Audiard, completely disowned Gascón. This was a man who had worked closely with Gascón, praised their talent, and helped push the film into the awards conversation.
So he immediately hides behind the idea that he's in a marginalized community, quote unquote, even though he was just nominated for an Oscar for a film that is objectively atrocious. It's actually the opposite of being marginalized. And the whole act isn't working anymore. The social media mob was not appeased. As a result, Gascón isn't being allowed to appear at any Oscars event for the film, and now his own director doesn't want anything to do with him.
But the moment the controversy started, he wasted no time in throwing Gascón under the bus. He called the comments hateful and inexcusable, and even said he didn't want to speak to Gascón anymore.
Here's what the director told Deadline, quote, "It's very hard for me to think back to the work I did with Karla Sofía, the trust we share, the exceptional atmosphere that we had on set that was indeed based on trust. And when you have that kind of a relationship and suddenly you read something that the person has said, things that are absolutely hateful and worthy of being hated, of course that relationship is affected. It's as if you fall into a hole because what Karla Sofía said is inexcusable. I haven't spoken to her and I don't want to. She is in a self-destructive approach that I can't interfere in, and I really don't understand why she's continuing."
The betrayal was complete. The industry had used Gascón for what they needed, a symbol for their progressive agenda. And now that they were inconvenient, they were discarded without a second thought.
Why is she harming herself? I don't understand it. And what I don't understand about this, too, is why she's harming people who are already close to her. She's really playing the victim. She's talking about herself as a victim, which is surprising. It's as if she thought that words don't hurt.
Gascón's downfall isn't just about one actor losing an Oscar bid. It's a reflection of how Hollywood operates. The industry doesn't care about individuals. It cares about maintaining control over the narrative.
In your head, put the air quotes around she and her throughout that entire quote. I was just telling you what the guy said. This, by the way, is like everyone in Hollywood. I think some of his co-stars too, but they're just throwing him under the bus completely. This is the kind of loyalty. This is the director of a film you worked with for a long time, professed to be a friend, and just immediately throwing him under the bus. Like no hesitation.
This isn't the first time we've seen this happen. It's a repeating pattern. They prop someone up, use them to push a message, and the moment that person steps out of line, they are erased. Loyalty means nothing in Hollywood.
Total disavowal, right, of a friend. This is the loyalty you get you get in Hollywood. And now we're being told that the trans-identifying actor is not allowed to play the victim.
At the end of the day, Gascon's biggest mistake wasn't making those tweets. Their mistake was thinking that their status as a transgender actor would protect them. It didn't. The same people who once championed them were the first to tear them down.
Even though when he stood up at the Golden Globes and said trans people were being killed in the streets or whatever, which isn't true, that was fine. But now his cloak of marginalization doesn't work anymore.
What makes this even more ridiculous is the fact that Gascon wasn't canceled for making a bad movie. They weren't canceled for giving a terrible performance. They were canceled for tweets that had nothing to do with their acting career.
Now he's persona non grata in Hollywood. In a matter of weeks, he's gone from giving weepy speeches at the Golden Globes to being disowned by his own director. And this whole saga, a sordid and weird tale as it is, tells us everything we need to know about modern Hollywood.
Think about it. Hollywood had no issue nominating a biological man for Best Actress. They had no problem with the absurdity of Emilia Pérez being called an important film. But they drew the line at a few social media posts from years ago.
Because Gascon hasn't been canceled for starring in one of the worst movies ever made. It's not as if everyone just woke up and actually watched this film and realized how unimaginably bad it is. That didn't happen. Nor has Gascon been canceled for deciding in middle age that he's really a woman, even though no one with two functioning eyes or ears would confuse him for a woman. None of that happened.
This is the hypocrisy of Hollywood. They pretend to be about inclusivity and fairness, but their entire system is built on manipulation and control. They don't care about progress. They care about compliance.
When he was a cross-dressing man appropriating womanhood in the worst movie ever made, but he crossed the line by tweeting some true things about George Floyd 4 years ago.
Gascon's story is just another example of how the woke mob eventually turns on its own. One day, you're the golden child. The next, you're radioactive. The only way to survive in Hollywood is to never step out of line.
Then people went looking through his other tweets and saw that he made fun of Selena Gomez and the Hollywood elites, and in the end, that's what will cost him the Best Actress award.
But here's the reality. Nobody outside of Hollywood actually cares. The average person isn't outraged about these tweets. They're just watching, shaking their heads, and laughing at how absurd the industry has become.
Hollywood has gone so insane that a terrible male actor in a bad film will now lose out on the Academy Award for Best Actress, but for reasons that have nothing to do with the fact that it was a bad performance in a bad film, or with the fact that he is, a man.
At the end of the day, Gascon learned the hard way that Hollywood doesn't actually believe in the things it preaches. And for the rest of us, it's just another reminder that the woke agenda always ends in self-destruction. So, what do you think? Is this just another example of Hollywood eating itself alive? Or did Gascon deserve to be canceled? Do you think there's a way back for them? Or is this yet another case of the woke mob turning on its own? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy content that cuts through the nonsense, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video.